It is a great honor for me to be addressing you today on this very special occasion. And I would first like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to you, the graduates, for all that you have achieved, and to the parents, grandparents, partners, children, friends, and families who have contributed in different ways to make this celebration at the finish line a reality. Now, for many of you, this occasion marks the end of what you may consider as the no. And now, you're about to undergo what we chemists call a phase transition, a process through which you will be brought to the land of unknown. In this place of the unknown, you may find yourself asking, what am I going to do? Am I ready for these new challenges? These questions must have gone through the minds of many graduates, and no doubt their parents, for the last 529 convocations. So if they're keeping you up at night of late, please don't worry, you're in good company. The opportunity to speak here today has prompted me to look back and reflect on what has transpired in my life since the day when I was in your seats wearing my caps and gowns for the first time. Now, if someone were to tell me then that I would be a chemistry professor, I would not have believed it. While this might come as a complete shock to those of you who took Chem 113 with me in your first year, or quantum mechanics with me in your third year, I am now confessing publicly that I actually do not have a chemistry degree. In fact, I only took one chemistry course in college, and that has remained the only chemistry course I've ever taken in my life. So how on earth am I supposed to be a chemistry professor? Don't worry, parents. The truth of the matter is that life presents itself with many twists and turns, and with occasional obstacles and detours along the way. So you never quite know where it is taking you. While the unknown is unpredictable, I implore you to embrace it and take every twist and turn as a learning experience. Now, as you walk through Cobb Gate for the final time this week, you might well be done with school, but your next phase of learning is just beginning. Learning that does not necessarily take place in a classroom, learning that will continue throughout your lifetime. Some of these learning opportunities require courage, while others, the willingness to step out of your comfort zone, yet others, the readiness to assume the associated risk. But I assure you that the rewards and the joy that await you can be enormous. Learning does not necessarily take a linear path, and mine was definitely non-linear. Coming from Hong Kong as an international student, I thought I had my life all planned out. I would major in electrical engineering, get my master's degree, and work happily ever after in Silicon Valley. However, my game plan got sidetracked by my senior thesis. My project involved mathematically coupling two laser systems together so that we can lower the onset of the threshold to a phenomena called chaos. This got me interested in lasers, and I decided to switch fields and pursue my PhD in applied physics instead. Now, during my doctoral work, I went from modeling laser to experimenting with lasers. One thing led to another. I ended up examining what happens when we call oil over troubled water, a well-documented phenomena in the Siemens handbook that results in the dampening of waves when a thin film is only a single molecule in thickness that sits at the water surface. Intrigued by the properties of these thin film, I did my first postdoctoral work in chemistry department. I was in a chemistry department, and my second in yet another department, this time chemical engineering. Now, to be frank, every time I entered a new field, I was feeling nervous and scared because it seems like everyone was ahead of me. Yet, it was also exhilarating because of the steep learning curve. My journey has allowed me to acquire the language of the different fields, see how different disciplines approach a problem, and formulate my own interdisciplinary research using physical techniques to get at a quantitative understanding of the interactions between molecules in a biomedically related system. While my training of going through 4 departments might really look like a random walk in the sciences, I was simply led by my interest, and I embraced the opportunity to learn about ideas that excited me. And I'm grateful that I continue to have this opportunity to learn on a daily basis from my colleagues and from students like you. Now, learning does not necessarily come easy, and I draw inspiration from a German scientist by the name Agnes Pockels because of her courage and persistence in defying all odds in her learning. Agnes Pockels is by no means a household name like Albert Einstein or Marie Curie. Born in 1863, Agnes grew up loving science, but university education was not accessible to women in those days. She did not bow down to the circumstances. Through her brother, Frederick Pockels, a famous physicist, Agnes gained access to scientific literature. And literally, using her kitchen as her laboratory, she discovered the influence of impurities on the surface tension of fluids. She constructed her experimental setup using household appliances and carried out the first observations of what would turn into a new field of inquiry of surface science. It is not hard to imagine how difficult it must have been for her to publish her work. Again, she did not allow the many rejection letters to dissuade her. After reading the published result of Lord Rayleigh in 1890 on the little understood properties of water surfaces, Agnes boldly wrote to him, sharing her results. This letter ended up being translated and communicated by Lord Rayleigh to the editor of the prestigious journal Nature and became Agnes's first publication. Her work actually laid the foundation for the research of Irving Langmuir, who won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1932. Agnes later on was recognized by the German Colloid Society, and it was gratifying to see her name alongside with Nobel laureates like Wolfgang Pauli, as in the Pauli exclusion principle, and amusing to see her profession listed, unlike any others, as Hausfrau, housewife. Agnes Pockels exemplifies learning against all odds. Her dogged determination has carried her science and her achievements far beyond the wildest imagination. So whatever your pursuits might be, don't let anyone define what you can or cannot do. Speaking of doing, John Dewey, the educator and professor of philosophy here at the turn of the 20th century, expounded the education theory, learning by doing, arguing that if knowledge comes from the impression made upon us by natural objects, it is impossible for us to procure knowledge without the use of objects which impress our mind. Dewey tested his theory at the University of Chicago laboratory school that he founded, which is only a couple of blocks down the street from here. While Dewey used this theory to argue for experiential education, in which students are allowed to experience and interact with the curriculum, I'm using this philosophy as a call for action in the real world into which you are about to embark. After all, there is only one true way to learn how to do something, and that is by doing it. There are many urgent problems and issues that our world is facing, and for which there exist no prescribed solutions. And the sense of urgency has been heightened over the last few months. So if you are concerned about climate change, if you're interested in resolving large-scale conflicts in the world, if you would want to see education being accessible to all, if you are concerned about food and water security, learn about how to tackle these problems by immersing yourself in them and acting on them. While today we're celebrating achievement and successes, I would be remiss if I do not acknowledge the important role failures play in the process of learning. I can safely argue that failure is not something that we celebrate. Often, the fear of failure presents itself as a significant, if not insurmountable, barrier for understanding and undertaking new adventure. Yet failure is a necessary prerequisite to becoming an expert in anything, which leads to the logical conclusion that failure is an integral part of success. When I was about to finish my PhD, my advisor pointed out that if I were to draw a pie chart of my time spent in graduate school, then the time that it took to obtain the data that is celebrated in my thesis would only be a very small sliver. Most of the time was occupied by efforts spent on failed experiments and devising ways to improve them so that we can get to where we want. Now, failure in and of itself is of very little value. I'm clearly not advocating that you should just go out, find something to do, and just fail spectacularly. The value of failure lies in how we learn from them, how they serve to nudge us to delve deeper, and how they spur us to approach a problem differently, perhaps more creatively. Of course, the difficult part is to sustain one's motivation and self-confidence in the face of failures. Therefore, it is important to keep in mind that failure is a normal human experience. In her 2011 column in the same journal, Nature, that's the only thing I read, Melanie Steffen, then a postdoc at Caltech, correctly points out that our curriculum vitae, our CV, only provides, and I quote, a narrative of success that renders our setbacks invisible both to ourselves and to the others. She went on to suggest having an alternative CV highlighting failures, one in which every unsuccessful application, turned down grant proposal, and rejected papers is detailed, and dares us to make these failures public, to remind ourselves and others of the missing truth, to balance the record, and to provide some perspective. I think this is a fantastic idea. Last, but certainly not least, is learning to achieve your own balance. Given that an average college student only gets to sleep 6 to 6.9 hours a night, you're well aware of the relentless demand of your time by your activities. I hate to break this to you, but this is not going to get any better soon. Learning what your priorities are and not to lose sight of what you hold dear, be it work, ambitions, relations, values, will be important to help guide you in your journey and leave you with few regrets. A former lab mate dying from cancer was not going to wait for me to finish my grant proposal so that I could keep my promise of visiting him in Germany. Once the opportunity is gone, there is no way to get it back. So pick and choose how you really want to spend your time is the key. Class of 2017, I dare say that you all had a learning experience of a lifetime here at the University of Chicago. Bring along with you wherever you go the rigor of inquiry, the willingness to challenge, the readiness to listen to those who might have different viewpoints. May you have the courage to embrace the unknown, the luxury to follow your passions, the audacity to defy your odds, the ability to put your thoughts into action, the humility to accept failures, and the insight to strike your balance. I wish you a fulfilling lifetime of learning. Go out, make your marks, and please come back and tell us what you learned. Thank you.